Cambridge IGCSE Chemistry, Paper 2-2, October-November Series 2018, Part 1. Oxygen and fluorine are gaseous elements next to each other in the periodic table. Under the same conditions of temperature and pressure, oxygen diffuses dash than fluorine because its dash is less than that of fluorine, which was correctly complete gaps 1 and 2. First off, I see reactivity as an option. One thing you need to know about reactivity is that fluorine is more reactive than oxygen. That is plain fact. But reactivity has no effect on diffusion or velocity of the molecule. So, option B and D are not going to be your answers. Strike out B and D. The question states both gases are at the same temperature. So it begs the question, what is temperature? Temperature essentially means that, or rather, temperature is a measure of the average kinetic energies of the particles in a substance. Now, because oxygen and fluorine are at the same temperature, it means that they have roughly, or rather the average kinetic energy is going to be the same. Now, if you were to look at the periodic table, fluorine has a greater mass than oxygen. So if fluorine has a greater mass than oxygen, it means that it has to compensate by reducing its velocity so it can have the same energy. So you know that oxygen is going to move faster than fluorine because oxygen has a smaller molecular mass. So your answer is going to be A. Question 2. The diagrams show 4 pieces of laboratory equipment. Which equipment is essential to find out if dissolving salt in water is an exothermic process? Now, because the question asked which equipment is essential, there's really only one equipment that you need, which is a thermometer, because you can take a beaker of water, dissolve the salt in it, and measure the temperature before and after dissolving it. So if it's an exothermic process, heat will be released out into the surroundings, so the temperature of the water will increase. So the only essential equipment that you need is a thermometer. So A will be your answer. How many neutrons are present in an atom of 45 nucleon number and 21 proton number? Nucleon number is this number 45. Comprises of the number of protons and the number of neutrons, and the bottom number 21 is the number of protons only. So you know that the number of neutrons is going to be 45 minus 21. Therefore B is your answer. 2 naturally occurring isotopes of oxygen are oxygen 16 and oxygen 17. Which statement is correct? To answer this question, we need to know what our isotopes are. Or rather, yeah. So isotopes are atoms of the same element, which means they have the same proton number, but they have different neutron numbers. Essentially, they are the same element, or the same atoms, because they have the same number of electrons and the same configuration of the electrons in the shells outside the nucleus. So the reactivity and the properties and the way it interacts with other molecules, it's exactly the same. And you know that oxygen will react with iron to form rust, because rust is iron oxide. So you know your answer is going to be A. Both the isotopes of oxygen will react with iron to form rust. How many electrons are used to form covalent bonds in a molecule of ethanol? So I'm going to just start drawing a molecule of ethanol here. Rather, CH3 bonded to oxygen and bonded to hydrogen. Now, in this molecule, every single bond is a covalent bond, and in every covalent bond, there is going to be two electrons, or rather one electron pair. So as here you can see there are 5 bonds. Each bond has an electron pair. That means that there are 10 electrons which are used to form covalent bonds in a molecule of ethanol. Your answer is going to be D. Potassium bromide and methanol are both compounds. Their melting points are different. Which row is correct? Now, potassium bromide is a ionic salt because potassium is a metal, bromide is a non-metal, so you can imagine it's going to be a giant ionic salt with a giant ionic lattice. This immediately should tell you that potassium bromide will have the higher melting point. Like I said, the potassium ions and the bromide ions form the ionic lattice, and there is a very strong attractive force between these oppositely charged ions, much greater than the attractive force between the molecules of methanol that holds the liquid, or rather holds the molecules together to form methanol liquid. So you know that C is going to be your answer. Which gas sample contains the smallest number of molecules? Now, the easiest way to do this is to convert each mass of each substance into their respective number of moles. You can do that by using the formula moles is equal to mass over molar mass. And if you were to use that formula to calculate everything, you would see that oxygen from 0.5 moles, while everything else is 1 mole. So you know your answer is going to be B. Equation for the reaction between calcium carbonate and dilute nitric acid is shown. 25 grams of calcium carbonate is reacted with an excess of dilute nitric acid. Which mass of calcium nitrate and which volume of carbon dioxide is produced at room temperature and pressure? Alright, so first I need to find out the number of moles that actually react with the nitric acid. Nitric acid is in excess, it really doesn't matter, we don't need to deal with that. All we need to know is the number of moles of calcium carbonate used. We can use that with the formula here. Over here. So 25 grams of calcium carbonate is going to be equal to 25 divided by 100, which is the molar mass of calcium carbonate, which will give you 0.25 moles. Now you see that the ratio for every 1 mole of carbon carbonate, there's also for every 1 mole of calcium carbonate, 1 mole of calcium nitrate is formed. So and this is the same case for carbon dioxide, 1 mole. So if 0.25 moles of calcium carbonate reacts, that means 0.25 moles of CO2 is formed, and also 0.25 moles of CaNO3 twice is formed. So I'll start with the CO2. 1 mole of any gas, takes up 24 decimeter cube or 24 liters of volume at room temperature and pressure, as stated here. So therefore 0.25 moles of carbon dioxide takes 6 liters or 6 decimeter cube. So your answer is this or this. Now back to the calcium nitrate. You know 0.25 moles of calcium nitrate is formed. Multiply that by the molecular mass of calcium nitrate, you'll get 41 grams. Your answer is going to be C. The formulae of some ions are shown. Which formula is not correct? This is a matter of elimination. So deciding the formula is based upon the oxidation states of the ions involved. So if I were to make a salt between titanium and phosphate, the salt that will be produced will have this coefficient 3 next to titanium because that's a coefficient of phosphate, and the coefficient of phosphate will be the charge of titanium. So notice how 4 here is a charge of titanium ions, and 3 here, the charge of phosphate ions, is the coefficient or the number right next to titanium. So this is how you would determine the equation of, or rather the formula of a salt. And so it's just a process of elimination. You'll arrive when aluminum, you'll see that option A, aluminum sulfate, is wrong. The actual formula is aluminum 2 sulfate thrice. So your answer is going to be A, which formula is not correct. Concentrated aqueous copper chloride is electrolyzed using copper electrodes as shown. Alright. What happens to the mass of each electrode during the process? Alright. So in this solution, there are Cu2 plus ions. These Cu2 plus ions get attracted to the negative electrode, and in the negative electrode there are electrons, so the Cu2 plus reacts or accepts 2 electrons and forms Cu, which is elemental copper. And so you'll see a buildup of copper around this electrode as time passes, as you pass current. So you know that the mass of the negative electrode will increase. Now chloride is Cl minus. Cl minus moves towards the positive electrode, where it gives away its electrons and forms chlorine gas. Chlorine gas would, chlorine gas would escape as bubbles all around near the positive electrode. And due to this, the copper inside, the copper inside the positive electrode will form Cu2 plus. And the reason it forms Cu2 plus is to replenish Cu2 plus that's being converted to copper here, so the concentration of the solution stays the same. So the copper, the positive electrode will break down. So your answer is going to be B. Question 11. The diagram shows a circuit used to electrolyze aqueous copper sulfate. Which arrows indicate the movement of copper ions in the electrolyte and of electrons in the electrical circuit? Now I know that electrons when a system is pushed by a battery, the electrons will move from the negative terminal of the battery all the way through to the positive terminal. So the movement of electrons is going to be path number 3, which is this and this. So what is the movement of copper ions? Copper ions are Cu2 plus in the solution. They get attracted to the negative electrode because they're oppositely charged, and so C would be your answer, as this is negative electrode. Hydrogen peroxide decomposes to form water and oxygen. The bond energies are in the table. The reaction is exothermic. Now, what is the energy chain for the reaction? Now, they've already given us the formula for hydrogen peroxide. There are 4 bonds. So what we have to do is find the energy in these bonds, or rather the energy of the initial reactants. So we can calculate that with the table here. You will reach a value of 1070 kilojoules per mole. Now you got to find out the energy of formations of the reactants. 460, pretty straightforward. Energy formation of oxygen gas is 496, also straightforward. Now to find out what the energy chain of the reaction is, you need to subtract the energy formation of all the reactants, or rather subtract the energy of formation of all the products from the reactants. So that's going to be 2 times 1070, which is hydrogen peroxide, minus the sum of energy of formation on the product side, which is 2 times 920 plus 496, you'll reach a value of minus 196. Notice the negative sign. They said the reaction was exothermic, so I know this is correct. So my answer is going to be B. The energy for the formation of ammonia is shown. The energy level diagram for the reaction is shown. What is the energy chain of the reaction? The energy chain of the reaction is indicated by this arrow, which is shown. So all you need to know is find the distance, or the distance that the energy that the distance represents. So notice how this jumps to 250. Assume this is 0 for this purpose. Assume this is 0. So at this level, it's 250. And then it jumps down to a level where it decreases by 342 kilojoules. So my answer is going to be 250 minus 342. I'll find the energy change between this level and this level. The answer is going to be minus 92. Answer is B. The rate of reaction between magnesium ribbons and 2 molar hydrochloric acid at 25 degrees Celsius is, rather, to produce hydrogen gas is measured. In another experiment, either the concentration of the hydrochloric acid or the temperature is changed. All other conditions are kept the same. Which conditions increase the rate of reaction? Now you know that when you react anything with the more concentrated reactant, the reaction will move at a much faster rate because the frequency of successful collisions increase. So you need to maximize the concentration of the hydrochloric acid. We also know at a higher temperature, the molecules, they move faster, similar to question number 1 where I told you where a high temperature means a higher energy, which means if you're talking about the same substance, that means the velocity of the particles will increase. Therefore, a higher temperature will also lead to a greater frequency of successful collisions. So the rate of the reaction increases when both of these effects are maximized, and so the answer is going to be D, which gives us maximum concentration and maximum temperature. Methanol is prepared when a reversible reaction shown. The following reaction is exothermic. Which conditions produce the highest equilibrium yield of methanol? Alright. The following reaction is exothermic. It means that as a product, heat is released. So you can represent it like this. Represent it as if heat was released. I'll just get rid of that. Okay. Alright. So adding heat over here will increase, or rather, it would push the equilibrium to the other side, as this side would have a greater concentration per se. So less methanol would be produced if more heat was produced or more heat was available. Second point, the right side has a greater number of gas molecules, as 1 CO molecules, which is gas, 2 hydrogen molecules. So the total is 3 molecules of gas, as opposed to 1 molecule of gas on the other side. So you know that increasing the pressure would shift the equilibrium to the side where there is a smaller number of gas molecules, which means that increasing pressure would increase the yield or the production of methanol. So you need to choose an option that has the least heat and the most pressure, and the answer to that would be C. Question 16. The thermite reaction can be used to produce iron from iron 3 oxide. The equation for the reaction is shown. Which statements about this reaction are correct? Aluminum is the oxidizing agent. Aluminum is less reactive than iron. Electrons are transferred from the aluminum to iron. The iron in iron 3 oxide is reduced. So you can see that the iron in iron 3 oxide was previously bonded to an oxygen. Now it's not. So you know that iron oxide is reduced. So that gives us option B or option D as they contain statement 4. So, is aluminum the oxidizing agent? Now, aluminum gets bonded to an oxygen. That means aluminum got oxidized. If aluminum got oxidized, it cannot be called the oxidizing agent, rather it is the reducing agent. So you know that option D is your answer. Question 17. In which row are the oxides correctly identified? Acidic oxides and basic oxides. All you need to know is metal oxides are basic, non-metal oxides are acidic. So your answer is going to be C. When dilute sulfuric acid is added to solid X, a colorless solution is formed and a gas is produced. What is X? Copper oxide, sodium oxide, copper carbonate, or sodium carbonate. What you should know is that copper, or any copper salts or any copper solution, they tend to be blue in color. And so the question told us is the colorless solution. We know it can't be the answer can't be A or C, because otherwise we would have a blue solution. Right. Also, it says a gas is produced. Whenever a carbonate reacts with an acid, immediately there is rapid gas formation. So that tells us that D is the answer. Question 19. A few drops of methyl orange are added to a reaction mixture. During the reaction, a gas is produced and the methyl orange turns from red to orange. What are the reactions? So what you need to know is methyl orange is red at acidic conditions, orange at neutral conditions, and yellow in basic or alkaline conditions. So initially, before the reaction occurs, the solution is red. The solution is red because it is in an acidic medium. So you know that your options should involve an acid because the methyl orange was originally red. So it leaves us with option C or option D because both of them contains acid. It becomes orange from red, and when it's orange, you know it's neutral. So, and with this process, it also says a gas is produced. And the only time a gas is produced within these two reactions is when it reacts with magnesium, where rapid hydrogen formation occurs to form hydrogen and MgCl2. MgCl2 is a neutral salt, so you know that the resulting mixture will be neutral, therefore the orange color. So you know your answer is going to be C. Question 20. Some general rules for solubility of salts in water are listed. Carbonates are insoluble except ammonium carbonate, potassium carbonate, and sodium carbonate. Chlorides are soluble except lead chloride and silver chloride. Nitrates are soluble. Sulfates are soluble except barium sulfate, calcium sulfate, and lead 2 sulfate. Which substances produce an insoluble salt when aqueous solutions of them are mixed? So this is actually a matter of elimination. All you have to do is switch the anions and cations. So option A would result in barium nitrate and magnesium chloride. So you should check if these two salts are soluble or insoluble. So through the process of elimination, you see that option C will result in silver chloride, which is an insoluble chloride. The question asks which substances produce an insoluble salt. You know your answer has to be C.